Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. 38th favorite dad in the family community. Papa West, Jacob West. I guess I have a little dry throat right now. That came out of nowhere. But you know what else came out of nowhere? The NFL season. Football in general. College had week 0 a couple weeks ago. Official week 1 last week. Week 2, yeah, it starts tomorrow. I think they have games tomorrow, maybe Friday, but definitely on Saturday. And then tomorrow kicks off the NFL season. So you know I'm going to talk about it. You know Tato's going to come up eventually and talk about it. I will say we're going to miss Tato for a couple weeks, I know, here at the very beginning of the season, just because with work stuff, he is going to be doing some trainings. That's going to be take him away from his home, and he might not have good internet access to be able to hop in with us, but that's okay because I'll talk about it later. Towards the end, something I want to introduce to this show. I've talked about it for a while. I'm talking about it again. We'll see if we do it. Probably not, but hey. So no, as we always do, we're going to start off this show, TMG Takes the Field, talking about college football. And what an exciting week we had. Saturday in, I believe it was in Ireland. You had Iowa State taking on Kansas State. Or this was week 0. Iowa State taking on Kansas State. Iowa State getting the win 24-21. Couple fourth down conversions to seal the win, which one reason why it's huge is because it's two top 25 teams. But also 2 teams in the Big 12. That's huge for if there's a tiebreaker coming up that could kick Kansas State out of the Big 12 championship game. Maybe we'll see. But Iowa State getting the win there, and then actual week 1, we had some upsets, we had some blowouts, we had some teams that we expected to dominated. We did have with week 1 Thursday night, Boise State without Ashton Genty couldn't play football. They lost to South Florida 34-7. On Friday, we had Illinois taking on Western Illinois, winning 52-3. And then Saturday, bunch of matchups. Tennessee beat Syracuse 45-26. Texas Tech beat Arkansas Pine Bluff 67-7. Iowa State beat South Dakota 55-7. Ole Miss beat Georgia State 63-7. Indiana beat Old Dominion 27-14. Texas A&M beat University of Texas in San Antonio 42-24. Oklahoma beat Illinois State 35-3. Kansas State beat North Dakota 38-35. SMU beat East Texas A&M 42-13. Florida beat Long Island 55-0. Michigan beat New Mexico 34-17. Arizona State beat Northern Arizona 38-19. Oregon beat Montana State 59-13. Georgia beat Marshall 45-7. Penn State beat Nevada 46-11. Another big upset. Alabama, the number 8 ranked team in the country, taking on Florida State, who just had their worst season in history, finishing 2-10 last year. Florida State beat Alabama 31-17. This is Alabama's first season opening loss since like 2008, early 2000s. They've been dominant. Obviously, Nick Saban retiring, Kellen DeBoer in his second year. But that being said, too, Florida State had a bad year last year. They got rid of whoever that quarterback was, DJ Uiagalelei. Somehow he's on an NFL team. I don't get that. But they did get Tommy Castellanos from Boston College, who I thought was a decent quarterback, and he balled. 31-17, Florida State getting the win there. And then 2 top 10 matchups. We did have LSU taking on Clemson, winning 17-10, and then Ohio State beating Texas 14-7. So I did want to at least share a couple thoughts with Saturday in general. Um, a lot of people thinking Alabama is going to be letting go of Kellen DeBoer. I don't see that happening. He did. They did get what 8 wins last year. Um, I do think he will get 7 or 8 wins this year. Have a winning season. Um, the college football landscape is in a much different spot than it was 2-3 years ago, and Alabama's not a powerhouse anymore. It's interesting to say that. Um, and that's not just Saban leaving. We could definitely see with his last couple years, Alabama was not as good as they had been in the past. Definitely kind of fell. They had a couple seasons where they won the championship, still towards the end of Saban's career, but definitely it didn't feel like the expectations dropped. But you could definitely tell that the talent that they had and the dominance that they had was starting to fall. Um, and obviously, when you lose a Hall of Fame coach like Nick Saban, there's going to be a couple years of growing pains. But that being said, too, Florida State, watch out, may have some fun ACC matchup games. I don't think they'll win the ACC per se, but they might just barely miss the championship game. I think they'll finish third. Um, Michigan, I'm surprised to see they're still playing with all the penalties that they have accrued from the Connor Stallions thing. But also, it's amazing to watch them play with the quarterback again. Um, Bryce Underwood, much better than anybody that they even thought about putting a quarterback last year, and it was very surprising to see them do well. Um, LSU and Clemson. I as soon as I saw that the over under was, I want to say it was 57 points. I'm like, yeah, there's no way. I remember a couple years ago when Clemson and Georgia played in their season opener, and again, Vegas was expecting a high scoring matchup. And that game finished 10-3. Um, so as soon as I saw that, I knew these two dominant defenses. There's no way there's going to be they're going to get anywhere near it. They weren't. They're like 30 points away. It was great. I bet on that. I made some money. But no, definitely watching both those teams play. I'm very excited to see how the Tigers' future turns out. This is also Brian Kelly's first season opening win in like 5 or 6 years. So going even further than being the Tigers head coach. And then Dabo Swinney. Hopefully we can see Clemson be dominant again. They had that great run towards the middle and end of last year to be able to get into the ACC championship game, which they won, getting them into the tournament. They weren't able to do anything in the tournament. So definitely looking forward to see what the Tigers do in the future. Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier, huge Heisman hopefuls, two of the better quarterbacks out there right now. So definitely looking forward to the rematch of this game. And then one more game I do want to talk about, the Texas-Ohio State game. Um, a lot of people are already calling Arch Manning a bust. He didn't do horrible. I mean, looking at stats, 170 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. That touchdown was one of the best passes I've seen in I don't know how long. That was a great pass. That was a great route, too. But I find it weird how people were praising him so much and just saying he was going to dominate when this is his first big start. He did have a couple games last year, but I want to say they were small. They were lower tier SEC schools. This definitely was his first major game. He did play against Georgia a little bit last year too, but to say this was his team, starting quarterback, in Columbus, Ohio. It's going to be tough for anyone. Um, I do definitely, I will praise them because it could have been a lot worse. Um, with that being said, is he going to go in the NFL next year? I really doubt it. Regardless of what anybody in that family has said, just based off of that performance, I do think Arch has a lot of growing to do before he thinks about entering the draft. And then one more thing I want to talk about. Also, I'll praise Ohio State's defense. I heard they ever praise Ohio State because I think they suck, just in general. But I will have to say that defense did play great. Um, Couple drives were a little sketchy, but definitely finishing it off strong. I think Texas was 0-4 in fourth down conversions, including a tush push on the one. There was another play on the 9 yard line, so definitely holding up when they needed to hold up. Um, watch out for Ohio State. Them and Penn State, I think, is going to be an interesting journey this year, just as far as the Big Ten goes, and then obviously as we see them. If they both make the college football playoffs, see where that goes. But definitely looking forward to seeing that, to seeing both those teams play. But because it is officially week 2, we have changed our rankings up a little bit. So now going from 25 to 1, we have entering ranked for the first time this season. At number 25, Utah. At number 24, we have Texas Tech. 23, Indiana. 22, Tennessee. 21, Alabama. 20, Ole Miss. 19, Texas A&M. 18, OU. 17, SMU. 16, Iowa State. 15, Michigan. 14, Florida State, jumping up way more than I feel a lot of people anticipated they would. 13, Florida. 12, Arizona State. 11, Illinois. 10, South Carolina. I forgot to talk about those last couple games. 9, Notre Dame. 8, Clemson. 7, Texas. 6, Oregon. 5, Miami. 4, Georgia. 3, LSU. 2, Penn State. And at number 1, we have Ohio State. And we did have some games on Sunday and Monday. 2 games on Sunday. South Carolina beat Virginia Tech 24-11. And then Sunday night, Miami beat Notre Dame 27-24. So huge game there between Miami and Notre Dame. The convicts versus the Catholics. It was great to see that rivalry game take place again. I hope it takes place. I hope they get to keep playing each other in the near future. And then the last game that happened on Monday night. We don't have Monday Night Football yet. That's this week. But last week, a couple days ago, we did have TCU traveling to Chapel Hill to take on North Carolina. Neither team ranked, but this is big news because of who North Carolina's head coach is. Bill Belichick, after a season of not coaching in the NFL, after 20-plus years of a New England dynasty, taking over college football. Well, he didn't take it over. He got taken over, actually. TCU destroyed 48-14. I read a stat. It was in Bill Belichick's total time in the NFL. I believe 511 games. 0 times did his team give up more than 45 points. In 1 game in college, he gave up more than 45 points. But, we'll have to see what that means for North Carolina in the future. Let's be honest, North Carolina's never been a college football powerhouse. So we'll have to see if they can bounce back from that. And here in the next couple of years, we'll see what Belichick can do. But I do want to go over the games for next week because we do have a couple. And they're all on Saturday, the day college football should be played. So first we have number 2 Penn State against Florida International University. San Jose State's traveling to Austin to take on Texas. Illinois is traveling to, I don't remember where in North Carolina they play, but Duke. Florida State's going to be taking on East Texas A&M. We have the Battle of the Cy-Hawk Trophy, Iowa and Iowa State. Baylor taking on SMU. Indiana's taking on Kennesaw State. Texas Tech's going to be taking on Kent State. Texas A&M's going to be taking on Utah State. The Battle of the Aggies. They don't have a cool name, but they need to have a cool name. Grambling is traveling to Columbus to take on Ohio State. Georgia's taking on Austin Peay. Oregon's taking on Oklahoma State. Huge rivalry with coaches there between Mike Gundy and Dan Lanning. Clemson's taking on Troy. Ole Miss is taking on Kentucky. Tennessee is taking on East Tennessee State University. Florida is taking on South Florida. Utah is taking on Cal Poly. Miami is taking on Bethune. South Carolina is taking on South Carolina State. LSU is taking on Louisiana Tech. Arizona State is taking on Mississippi State. Alabama is taking on UL Monroe. And we have one ranked versus ranked matchup this upcoming weekend. Number 15 Michigan is traveling to Oklahoma to take on number 18th ranked Oklahoma in Norman. Something Memorial Stadium. I can't remember the name of it. But definitely going to be every game's exciting. We know the outcome of most of these games. It's going to be a lot versus a little. But it's always fun to just to see how the games play out. Definitely going to be a lot of betting on my end going on with some of these games because I tend to do that. But now that has been college football. I'm going to reach down, grab my drink, and then we're going to talk about the NFL. Because I did it last year. I did it this year too. And the whole time my wife is like, why are you doing this to yourself? I gritted out the whole NFL schedule. Greens are wins, red are losses, black are bye weeks. Sound crazy, I guess. So I'm going to go over both predictions as far as division finishes. And then I'm going to give my thoughts on how the playoffs are going to line out. And then week 1 predictions. And breaking news, because we break news, the 49ers and Juwan Jennings reached an agreement on a deal that will add $3 million in playtime incentives to the wide receiver's contract. Nice. Congratulations, Juwan Jennings. Showed up in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. And with San Francisco having some issues keeping their wide receivers and just teammates in general healthy, that's big for them. So I'm going to break down division by division how I think every division is going to end up. I'm going to give you records. I'm going to give playoff predictions. And then I'm going to give you week 1 predictions. So first off, we're going to start with the AFC, and we're going to start off with the East. So I have finishing 4th, I have the Jets. I mapped out the season before Elijah Vera Tucker's injury. I believe he is believed to have a torn tricep, which will take him out of the year. Had I have known he was going to get injured, I would have given them less wins than I actually gave them. But I do think they will finish out 5-12 this year. A couple wins that I'm giving them. I do think week 1 they beat the Steelers. Just because there's not a lot of chemistry with the Steelers offense right now because none of them played in the preseason. They're also traveling to New Orleans to take on the Saints. That's a win I gave them. I gave them a win against the Dolphins in New York because that's a very late game, and Miami does not travel well. And then I also have them beating the Browns, and I have them beating the Cowboys. So I do think that they go 5-12. But now they're going to go 3-12. In third place, I have Miami, also finishing 5-12. I do think Mike McCarthy. I can't remember I can't think of their head coach's name right now. I do think this will be his final year with the team. Um, I have them splitting with the Jets. I have them beating the Panthers, Browns, Saints, and Bengals. And I have them losing just about everywhere else. Again, they had a very tough end of year last year. I think this year is going to be another tough one. Of their last 5 games, 3 of them are away. 3 of them, the all away games, are up north. Um, and then they're also taking on the Buccaneers. Bengals third to last week. I'm giving them the win against the Bengals, but just barely. Um, Definitely don't see the Dolphins doing much this year, especially with some trades that they made too. I don't think that they built this team well enough in the offseason, but I definitely don't think they're a bad team. I think this is going to be one of those head scratching years. They're better than what their record shows, but I do see them at being 5-12. New England, I have them finishing second. Um, I have them going 8-9, splitting most of their division games, losing both times to the Bills, I believe. Um, or actually, no, I have them winning against the Jets and Dolphins both times. Um, I do think they're going to have a rough start to the season. Their first 5 weeks, I think they'll only win one, and that's in week 2 against the Dolphins. Um, they do have some really tough games on the road, traveling to Tampa Bay, traveling to Cincinnati, traveling to Baltimore. But I do like Mike Vrabel. I think he is one of the best coaches in the league today, and I do think he starts turning this team around, getting him back to not necessarily the dynasty that they were, but back into dynasty conversations. And that means the Buffalo Bills are last, which means they are first. I have them finishing the season at 14-3, which first 6 games I have them going 1-5. I actually have them winning up until week 12, where they travel to Houston to take on the Texans. I do think they lose week 1 against the Ravens. It's going to be a very hard fought game, but I think they lose to the Ravens in Houston in week 12. And then week 17, they're taking on the Eagles in Buffalo, and I do think the Eagles will be playing for a little bit more, but I do think the Eagles do get the win on that one. But still, 14-3. This team is favored in every single game that they're playing in. So a lot of people are talking about them going undefeated. Um, I don't think they'll go undefeated, obviously, but I do have them winning the AFC East once again. Next, we're going to move on to the North. I have Cleveland finishing in last place at 4-13. I do think that they get a week 1 win against the Bengals, but they lose every single game until week 13 against the 49ers. Whether there's a quarterback change in the middle of this, towards the end of this, I don't know. I didn't really think of that too terribly much. But I definitely, regardless of who they have at quarterback, I don't see them doing much this year. Um, and that's also regardless of if it's Dylan Gabriel or if it is Shador Sanders. I think this team just has too many holes. I will say I like their tight end, David Njoku, and I like Jerry Jeudy. But that's about all that I like on this team. Their defense is Myles Garrett, and that's it. Um, don't really have much other than him. And you can say Mason Graham, but let's be honest. Mason Graham's a rookie. We'll see how well he does. Defensive tackles aren't really known for doing well in their first couple of years, except for Jalen Carter, because Jalen Carter's a beast. Next in the North, I have Cincinnati finishing at 8-9. Um, I have them getting their first win in Week 5 against the Lions, and then being able to get not necessarily a streak going, but definitely having better luck towards the middle of the season. I will say, too, I think they have a pretty tough ending of the season also. Yeah, their last 3 games, 2 of them are away. But one thing I will say about Cincinnati is that's very much a team that you don't want to get hot because that offense can be killer. Just unfortunately, they don't have a defense, so you can let the offense get as hot as you want, as long as you have a decent offense too. And one thing is, I think they have a really tough schedule this year, um, and they do tend to start a little slower. I like the fact that their starters played for most of the preseason to try to negate that, but they're still a little known for starting off slower. So I do think they go 8-9, which I think kicks them out of the playoffs. Based on what, yeah, that'll kick them out of the playoffs. At number two, I have Pittsburgh with a winning season. I have them finishing at 9-8. Again, very similar. I have them losing the first game against the Jets, but then I have them going on to the Seahawks and then Patriots winning both of those. Having a couple win streaks in the middle of the season. I think again this team is very much a has the talent to be able to do just enough to get him in a good spot. And Tom Landry, wow, Mike Tomlin does not have losing seasons, and so I think they do just enough to not have a losing season, um, getting them that 9-8 finish. Next, we move on to the South. The South is one of those where I don't know how to gauge this division because I kind of like all four teams. Um, but I do have the Colts finishing in last place at 5-12. This was another one I was looking at it, and they have a pretty tough schedule. Granted, I can see three of these losses easily being wins. Daniel Jones is not a horrible quarterback. He's not a great quarterback, but he's not horrible. Having Shane Steichen as his head coach, I think, is huge. And I really like Tyler Warren as their tight end. Um, he was the second best player on Penn State's team. So I definitely think he's a huge target for Daniel Jones. Um, and then they don't have horrible weapons either. They have a decent line. And then Jonathan Taylor is just amazing. I do think this defense keeps them from winning a couple games that they should win. So for that reason, I have them in last place at 5-12. Then I have the Tennessee Titans at 6-11. I think they get their first win in Week 3 against the Colts, but definitely going on quite a bit of some losing streaks there. Um, this is another kind of tough one because I watched Cam Ward at Miami, and he was pretty good, but he also had a great team around him. And while I like Calvin Ridley, that's the only wide receiver. Or no, they have Tyler Lockett too. Um, or is he a Panther? I think he's a Titan. Tony Pollard's not a great running back. Um, I can't think of their tight end's name. Okonkoro. Um, Definitely not a household name. But I will say, I definitely think Cam Ward's a massive improvement from Will Levis, and Will Levis did lose them several games last year. So while I think there's no way they go what they do last year, 4-13, I do think they get a couple more wins from that. I'd like to see them get a lot more wins than that, but I do think 6-11 is a good number there, and again third. And number two, I have Jacksonville at 8-9. I did see a funny on Rich Eisen's um, Overreaction Monday. Chris Brockman said it was like week 12. Travis Hunter is going to have to pick a side. He can't play both anymore. And while I don't think that's going to be the case, this is another team that does have a pretty tough schedule. Um, and especially towards the end of the year. I mean, they're traveling to Denver to play the Broncos in Week 16. Um, they have a pretty earlier bye. It's in Week 8, so they still have 10 weeks after that. I definitely see them not necessarily falling apart, but having a couple close games towards the end of the year that they do lose that hurts them in the long run. So I do think they finish at 8-9. which means in first place I have Houston. I don't like Houston per se. Um, I don't think CJ Stroud is an amazing quarterback, but I do think that team is built pretty good. D'Amico Ryans is a great head coach, and they have a generally easy schedule. Again, I think that they do beat the Bills in Week 12. I think, I have them winning their last 4 games, which gets them a huge push into finishing in first place, and then maybe hopefully turning into a nice run in the playoffs when that starts. But I do think they take advantage of a really easy last 4 games. I say really easy. Week 17 is in Los Angeles against the Chargers, but they have the Cardinals, Raiders in Houston, and then they finish up against the Colts, which I think will be a fun game. Very similar to that year Gardner Minshew was a Colt, and one drop pass made them lose the game and the playoff spot. Which means we have the AFC West, and I really wish Tato was here because I could say, hey, you remember how I picked the Kansas City Chiefs to go like 10-7 and miss the playoffs? Because I remember doing that last year. And wouldn't that be crazy if I did it again? Well, fourth place, I have the Las Vegas Raiders at 8-9. This is one of those fun divisions where I think one team improved greatly, that being the Raiders. One team improved, I'm not going to say greatly because they were at a really good spot beforehand, but I think the Broncos improved greatly or decently. Chargers added a couple weapons, and I don't really like what the Chiefs did this offseason, but I do think all 4 teams are in playoff contention for most of the year. Not necessarily division, or not necessarily winning the division, but all 4 teams will be in playoff contention up until like week 15 or 16. I think the Raiders do have a nice push in the season. I see most of their wins being in 2 in a row, just with easy matchups, kind of intermixed in the middle of the season. And I like what they've done with Ashton Genty. Great pickup there. Brock Bowers had a great year last year. Getting Geno Smith, so actually having a quarterback, I think is definitely going to be an improvement. Getting Amari Cooper is huge. Now, whether they can keep Jacoby Myers or not, it's definitely going to say a lot because that team is a lot better with Jacoby as compared to without Jacoby. But I do like most of everything this team has done in the offseason. Number 3, I have the Chargers also finishing at 8-9. One thing I will say is I hate the fact that they start off the season against Kansas City in Brazil. So while they don't really have home field advantage in general, it's really going to hurt that their home game against the Chiefs is not really a home game. But they do have a pretty nice stretch kind of right in the middle of the season where I have them knocking off 4 wins back to back to back. I do like the late bye. They have a bye in week 12. But I think the last 5 games are pretty brutal. Week 14, they have the Eagles. 15, they're traveling to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. 16 is a little bit of a break as they have the Cowboys. But then 17 and 18, they have the Texans and then the Broncos. So I definitely think have a rough start to the year, have a rough ending to the year, and unfortunately that's gonna hurt them. I do think 8-9 definitely not enough to make the playoffs. And then at number 2, so as I said earlier, I had Kansas City going 10-7 last year, missing the playoffs altogether. And I still could do that because in third place, the Chargers are at 8-9. So second place could be 10-7. I'm not going to make I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to go 10-7. I think they'll pull out a couple more wins. So at 12-5, I actually have the Denver Broncos. Again, this team had a really good start, really good ending of the year last year. I famously would say Bo Nix is trash, and well, I still believe that 100% Bo Nix is trash. I like the team that they built around him. Getting Evan Ingram at tight end, I think, is a really nice move. Giving him a run game with J.K. Dobbins. R.J. Harvey, not going to lie, I didn't watch him a lot in college. But then also what they did on defense, I think the Broncos are going to be scary. And 12-5 will win a couple divisions. Unfortunately, I do not think it wins this division, as I have the Kansas City Chiefs going 15-2 and winning the AFC West. The two games that I have them losing, I have them losing in week 2 against the Eagles. And then in week 9, they're traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. I have them losing that game also. I will say we were just talking about the Broncos being scary. Which one is it? Week 12? No. Week 11. Kansas City has to travel to Denver to take on the Broncos. I give them the win just because both teams are coming off the bye, and Andy Reid is practically unbeatable. I think he's only lost twice coming off the bye. And so I think that little nugget of information screws the Broncos out of a win. Granted, it wouldn't really do much because that would make them 13-4 versus 14-3, so they'd still lose the division from that. But I do find it unfortunate that when they have the Chiefs at home is right after the Chiefs bye. Which means our division winners of the AFC, just like last year, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Texans, and the Bills. As we move on to the NFC, we're going to start off with the NFC East. In last place, I must preface this by saying I hate this team. And the fact that I hate this team is not why I'm giving them the worst record in football. The fact that they have the worst management in the NFL is not why I'm making them have the worst record in football. The fact of they have really crappy management. I hate this team, and they just traded away a generational talent pass rusher. The Dallas Cowboys, I think, will have the worst record in all of football. That and they have a really brutal season. Yeah, Maddie, I didn't pick your Titans to have the worst season. No, the Dallas Cowboys, I have them finishing 3-14 this year. So good news, Cowboys fans. With that, because of that trade, you do get a pick in the top 5. It's just not the pick you got from Micah Parsons. Your own pick got your top 5 pick, and the Parsons pick will get you like a number 28. So it's essentially a second round pick. Good job, good job, Jerry Jones. Great move for the Packers. But no, Dallas, I think, has a really rough schedule. They're playing the AFC West, and so especially like right in the middle of the season, they have the Raiders, Chiefs, Broncos in Week 8. Chargers is towards the end of the season. The Chiefs is a Thanksgiving game. And then they also have the NFC North. So week 4, they're traveling to, to Green Bay. So we'll see how well that does. Ooh, question in the chat. Do they take Manning with the possible number 1 pick? No. Arch Manning won't be available this year. Rewind to minute 14. And I talk about that actually. Um, that being said, though, do I think they pick a quarterback? No. But I do think that they finish with they probably won't have the worst record, but definitely one of the worst records. I do think there are a couple wins where I just are kind of, hey, I hate you, so I'm doing it. Um, like the Cardinals in week 9, but also Jonathan Gannon, great defensive coach. They picked up some really good players on defense. So I think they will struggle against that Cardinals team. Again, I have them losing to the Jets. With the Elijah Vera Tucker news, that could change. But it's also in New York, so I don't know on that one either. Wins that I am giving them. In week 6, they're traveling to Carolina to take on the Panthers. They might actually lose that game. So it's another 2-16 or 2-15. They have the Commanders in week 7. It's at home, but then I also think they'll beat the Commanders in week 17. Just because I don't think Dan Quinn will do that to the Cowboys. In third place, I have the New York Giants. I have them finishing at 5-12, beating the Cowboys both times, I believe. Yeah, beating the Cowboys both times. I also have them beating the Commanders in week 15. I have them beating the Vikings in week 16, and then I also have them beating the Saints in week 5. Again, this is very much well, yes, Russell Wilson's a decent quarterback. I just think there's not enough around that team in general. And Abdul Carter, I watched that kid get trucked by a third string tight end. I have no faith in him. I do think they have a better defense than what a lot of people are talking about, but still, I don't see them doing much better than 5-12 if they do. And is this the end of Brian Dable? Possibly could be. He's better as an offensive coordinator. In second place, I have Washington at 10-7. Again, they have a couple nice patches in the middle of the season. One other huge thing is when they play the Broncos, it's in Washington, which worst stadium in all of football. But I do think they lucked out quite a bit with some of these teams where they are. And they have the Dolphins in week 11 in Madrid, Spain. So the Dolphins do not travel well. And they get them to travel across the world. Maddie telling me 5-12 is generous. Yeah, you're not wrong. It is kind of generous. So I do think Washington, I'm not going to say they're going to have as good of a season as they did last year, but I do think they have a pretty good season. The Terry McLaurin signing just a couple weeks ago was huge. But then at number 1, I do have the Eagles going 15-2. Their 2 losses is I do think they lose to the Buccaneers in week 4 because for some reason we can't beat the Buccaneers. And then I do also have us losing to the Commanders in week 16. It's in Washington. And so I do think that we split with the Commanders. They get that game. We'll get them in 2 weeks. And then again, I have us beating the Bills just because I do think we play our starters up until the end of the season. Maybe give them the last game off. But I think we're playing for a little bit more than what Buffalo's playing for. And so we do get the win there. Shocking, I know. Next, we move on to the North. This one's very similar to the AFC West. I think all 4 teams have a really good season this year, but not everyone can win. At number 4, I do have Minnesota going 8-9. I do not think they're able to replicate last year's magic, mainly because I think they have a downgrade at quarterback. JJ McCarthy, this being his first official year, because he hasn't torn his meniscus yet. He is a good running quarterback, but at the same time, Michigan won so many games where he did not throw the ball. And so I don't know how good he is because I've never really seen him have to win a game. And I've watched a lot of Michigan football. So that should tell you everything you need to know. Um, Finishing third, Tato, you'd like this. I have the Bears. I have the Bears also going 8-9. I do think they had a much better ending to the preseason. I like kind of the flowing that Caleb Williams has been having, especially the last couple weeks in the Ben Johnson offense. And I'm not gonna lie, they have some rough away games. So I mean, they open up the season in Green or no, yeah. They week 2 is in Detroit. Week 6 is in Washington. They have the Ravens and Bengals away, the Eagles away. So I do think that schedule is not super nice to them, but they do have much better luck than they did last year, finishing at 8-9. Second place, also finishing at 8-9. That's right. I predicted 3 teams to go 8-9. I have the Detroit Lions. I do this team too has some really tough away games. I mean, they start off by going to Green Bay and playing the Packers. Week 3, they're in Baltimore. Week 5, they're in Cincinnati. 6, they're in Kansas City. 10, they're in Washington, D.C. 11, they're in Philadelphia. 15, they're in Los Angeles, taking on the Rams. So much better home field advantage than what the Chargers would have. And really, I'm looking at it. I think they lose every single away game because non-conference or non-division away games are brutal for them as far as who they are playing. And we saw it a couple years ago with the Eagles having that massive collapse right after losing both of their coordinators. Kind of feel this is going to be the same thing. Jared Goff, I don't think is as great of a quarterback as what a lot of people thinks he is. He had some good weapons, but he also had an offensive genius coordinator calling the plays. So I think they definitely have a huge fall from where they finished last year. And I think they barely miss out on a winning season. But again, they have brutal away games this year. And then finishing in first place, I do have the Packers. I have them going 12-5. And I will say, I think a lot of that is that Parsons trade. I don't have them winning as much without Parsons as I would after that trade. I have them going undefeated up until week 7. I think they travel to Arizona to take on the Cardinals, and I have them losing that game. I definitely see that as a trap game. Week 10, they play Philadelphia. I think the Eagles pull that one out. 13, the Thanksgiving game, they play Detroit in Detroit. And then I have them losing to the Bears, and then I have them losing to the Broncos in Denver. So they're in that weird spot where they have a pretty tough schedule, but a lot of those tough games are at home. But I do think they're going to be a scary team. Will I say Super Bowl contenders? I'll say contenders. I don't think they make it, but I think I think they have the second or third best odds in the NFC to do it. Next, we're going to move on to the South. Third and fourth place, I have both finishing with the same record at 5-12. I have the Saints and the Falcons. The Saints, this was the team last year who I predicted would win one game. And funnily enough, they looked dominant for 2 weeks, and then they just fell off and looked – well, actually 3 weeks. because they were 2-0. And then when they played the Eagles, they actually played them very well. But then after that Eagles loss, they just fell apart. I think they get a win in week one as they take on the Cardinals in New Orleans. I think Kellen Moore plays gets some nice plays going, kind of some stuff we don't see. And then I have them losing just about every other game after that. I have them splitting a couple matchups with their division opponents. And then I do think they play the Seahawks in, or no, I'm looking at the wrong one. Yeah, they play the Titans in week 17. Um, I do think they edge out some miracle wins towards the end. They get a win there. And then I also have them finishing with a win against the Falcons. Falcons also have finishing at 5-12, like I said earlier. Um, and really, I'm kind of generous with those five. I know a lot of people love Penix. Expect to have a very similar season to last year, where they're in the division up until the last week, and they just kind of blow it at the end. I do not like Penix. He did not look good in any of his games last year that he played in. Bijan's a good running back, but I definitely see them having to throw the ball a lot more. And while Drake London's a good receiver, that's all they have for receivers. Darnell Mooney's not great. Kyle Pitts, if you drafted him in fantasy, I'm sorry. Why would you do that to yourself? I think I auto-drafted him in one league, and I'm already looking to ditch him as soon as I can. Or he'll just ride my bench for the season. Both are feasible options, let's be honest here. Dale, if you're watching, I'm sorry. And you're going to tell me next time I'm at your house how I'm wrong. Tell me. I'm not. I don't think so, at least. Number two, I do have the Buccaneers finishing at 8-9. I do think they have two tough games. They start the year off in Atlanta against the Falcons, and then in Houston against the Texans. Pretty brutal stretch, week 5 through 8. 3 away games. Their one home game is the 49ers. I have them losing all of those. And they're not really able to get a good stretch of wins going. I think it's going to hurt them. I think they're in the division conversation, again, up until the second or last week. But just unfortunately, that stretch in the middle of the season, I think is going to hurt them. And winning it, I have the Carolina Panthers. I do like what this team has done. I really like Chuba Hubbard. Definitely a couple fantasy leagues where I was about to draft him, and I'm like, nobody's going to draft Chuba Hubbard. There's like 8 players in between him and who's predicted to get picked. But other people like him too, and so I did not pick him because somebody grabbed him before I could. I think the draft pick of Tato McMillan is huge. And Bryce Young has been played a lot better towards the end of year. He got some chemistry with Xavier Legette. And so I definitely see them having not necessarily a bounce back year, but I do think they have a much better year than what they had last year. And I have them winning. I have them winning the NFC South. Now we move on to our final division, the NFC West. This is another kind of weird competitive one. I think 3 teams are very much in it. The one team that's not is the Arizona Cardinals, but I gave them 7 wins. I think they finished 7-10. I like their defense. Picking up Josh Sweat is huge. Picking up, drafting the Ole Miss defensive tackle, I believe it's Nolan Smith. I thought the Eagles would get him. Didn't happen. I like their defense. Again, Jonathan Gannon was a great defensive coordinator in Philadelphia. Did not really see him making the jump to head coach. I still don't see him making the jump to head coach, but running that defense, I think that defense can be scary. Again, they have a rough start to the season, but I do think they pick up kind of some surprise wins. Um, or they definitely, I see them playing spoiler a couple times in the middle of the season. So I do have them going 7-10. Third place, I do have the San Francisco 49ers. Um, I think the 49ers were cursed last year with all those injuries. I don't know how that happens, but it's going to happen again this year. Um, I don't think they bounce back from losing Debo Samuel. I think that's a huge loss, no matter how many wide receivers you draft. Well, yes, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings are all good options. I don't think they are going to be quite up to the halfway to the or the Debo level. Um, but Christian McCaffrey's healthy, so that's good. A lot of people gave him crap. I actually suffered from tendonitis for middle part of this year. That sucked. Christian McCaffrey, I understand what you're going through. And I see why you sat out most of the season. In second place, this is going to be a little controversial. I have the Rams finishing 11-6. And there's a huge caveat here. I can see them doing a lot worse if Matthew Stafford doesn't finish the season. And I kind of see Stafford not finishing the season. Didn't participate much during preseason because of a back issue. He did have an epidural, kind of some visited a chiropractor, so he's slated to play. But I can very much see middle of the year, week 3 when they take on Philadelphia, him just having some issues that he's not able to overcome, and maybe we'll see Jimmy Garoppolo finishing out the season there. I do. It's funny. I have him losing to the Eagles, and then I have him next week losing to the Colts. A couple years ago, the 49ers were the team where teams were like 0-16 the next week after playing them. Just because of how mean the 49ers team was. You were so beat up you couldn't win the next game. I think it's going to be the Eagles this year. It's going to be the Eagles every year, let's be honest here. So I have the Rams finish second, which means I have the Seattle Seahawks winning the NFC West, finishing at 13-4. Jay, my good friend who lives in Seattle, has told me that Seattle's building a community around Sam Darnold. I think we are seeing a resurgence in his career. Not a resurgence, but a surgence, because there was nothing to begin with. And, hey, they start off against the 49ers. 49ers have been battling injury. They have a stretch where they play the Saints, Cardinals, and Buccaneers. Cardinals, Rams, Titans, Vikings, Falcons, Colts, and Rams. That's a nice little stretch of wins right there. That's towards the end of the season. But I do think momentum carries them to an extra win against the Rams at the end. So I do have Seattle winning the division there. Because, again, they're healthy. I like Cooper Kupp on that team. Yeah, that's right. You forgot. Cooper Kupp's not a Ram anymore. So with that, my playoff prediction, I have in the AFC, number 1 is Kansas City. I have Buffalo taking on Jacksonville as the 2-7. The 3-6 is Baltimore and Pittsburgh. And then the 4-5 is Houston and Denver. I think Denver, Buffalo, and Baltimore all come out of week 1 with the wins. So we have Kansas City taking on Denver and then Buffalo taking on Baltimore. I think Denver gets the win against Kansas City. I have them going 0-2 in the season. It's really hard to go to win 3. I think Denver does get their revenge too. And then I do have Buffalo beating Baltimore, kind of getting revenge from week 1. And then Denver versus Buffalo. I think Buffalo wins. I think Buffalo makes it to the Super Bowl. I understand a lot of people are saying that. But that's how I have them doing it. And then with the NFC, I have Philadelphia being number 1. Your 2-7 is Seattle and Tampa Bay. Your 3-6 is Green Bay and Washington. And then your 4-5, I have Carolina versus Los Angeles. I have Tampa Bay, Green Bay, and Los Angeles all getting the wins in the first round of the playoffs. So I have Philadelphia versus Tampa Bay, and then Green Bay versus Los Angeles. I think Philadelphia and Green Bay get the wins. So it's Philadelphia versus Green Bay. And obviously, I have to go with the Eagles. For starters, I think they win. Like, let's be honest here. It's not necessarily a homer pick when it's true. But then also, I do think the Eagles just too good on offense. I think they do get the win against Green Bay, which means your Super Bowl matchup is the Buffalo Bills versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And wouldn't that be great? Buffalo, the team that has been to 4 Super Bowls, and they lost to all NFC East teams. Can they get the one win against an NFC East team? No, I have the Eagles winning the Super Bowl and repeating. So that's how I see the season going out. But we do play this season 1 week at a time. So I'm going to go over my weekly predictions. Thursday night football. Dallas is traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Eagles are a 7.5 point favorite, at least when I wrote this down. They're an 8.5 points, as opposed to, I believe, Monday night. Again, I do think Philadelphia gets the win. It's banner night, and it's against the Cowboys. Friday in Sao Paulo, we have the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chiefs are 3.5 point favorites. Again, I said a little bit earlier, I think it's horrible for the Chargers to have their home field game in Sao Paulo against the Chiefs. I do think this will be a close one. It might be a 2-3 point game. So LA covers, but I do think Kansas City gets the win. And then our Sunday games. At 11 o'clock, we have the Cardinals going to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Cardinals are a 6.5 point favorite. I do have the Saints. Again, just pulling something out. Some weird offensive plays with Kellen Moore. I do think the Saints get the win there. The Dolphins are traveling to Indianapolis. The Colts are 1.5 point favorites. Regardless of if it's Richardson or Jones, I do think the Colts do just enough to get the win there. The Raiders are traveling to New England to take on the Patriots. Patriots are 2.5 point favorites. I have the Raiders winning this one. I think they're able to control it just enough on both sides with running and throwing. I think they're able to control just a little bit better, and I do think the Raiders get the win. We have the Steelers traveling to New York to take on the Jets in a Aaron Rodgers revenge game. Or is it a New York Jets revenge game? Steelers are 2.5 point favorites. I have the Jets winning this one. I might have picked this before the Elijah Vera Tucker news, but again, I do think the fact that Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf did not throw to each other at all this preseason. I do think there's just a little bit of camaraderie there that was not had, and so I do think the Jets pull out a Meadowlands miracle there. Next, we have the Giants traveling to Washington to take on the Commanders. Washington is a 6.5 point favorite. I do have the Commanders winning that game. The Panthers are traveling to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. Jaguars are 2.5 point favorites. I do think I don't know. Travis Hunter is crazy. I do think the Jaguars get the win there. The Bengals are traveling to Cleveland to take on the Browns. Bengals looks like 5.5 point favorites. The Bengals generally start off slow. So I think Myles Garrett just gets a couple sacks that Bengals can't do anything about. I think Cleveland gets the win here. And then our final 1 o'clock game, the Buccaneers are traveling to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. Buccaneers are 2.5 point favorites. I'll tell you right now, I do not know why, but I have the Falcons winning this one. Next, we're moving on to the 4 o'clock games. 2 games at 4:05. The first one, the 49ers are traveling to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. 49ers are 2.5-point favorites. And I really like the Seahawks team. I think Seattle gets the win. Titans are traveling to Denver to take on the Broncos. Broncos are 8.5-point favorites. I like the Broncos defense way too much. I think the Broncos get an easy 3-touchdown win there. I said it, Maddie. Next, we have the 4:25 games. The Lions are traveling to Green Bay to take on the Packers. Packers are 2.5-point favorites. I'm giving the edge to the Packers there. Then we have the Texans traveling to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. Rams are 2.5-point favorites. And again, I do give the edge to the Rams. I don't know what you want.
The blanket.
I have stuff on the blanket.
I need something for under my head. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was trying not to. That's why I was pointing. Thank you.
There's like 3 things you were pointing at.
All right. All that was there.
Next we have, because Rams beat the Texans, Sunday Night Football. The Ravens are traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Bills are 1.5-point favorites, but I do give the edge to the Ravens. In the words of Tato, name a Bills wide receiver. Exactly. I think the Ravens do pull it out. And then Monday Night Football, we have the Vikings traveling to Chicago to take on the Bears. Vikings are 1.5-point favorites. Again, JJ McCarthy. I don't know how good you are. Oh, you're trash. It was Bo Nix last year. It's JJ McCarthy this year. Bears get the win. With that, thank you so much for watching. I will have Tato send me his picks later, and we will do the friendly competition again this year of who has the better record. We did oatmeal cream pies for the winner and the loser. I think we'll do that again. Which means, I hinted at it earlier, something else we're going to bring back. I cried Saturday because a legend in the game of football predictions retired. Lee Corso with his final helmet pick, picking the Ohio State Buckeyes to beat the Texas Longhorns. It happened. One thing College Game Day has been synonymous for. Synonymous? I don't think that's how you say that word, but I'm saying it. Is a celebrity guest picker. Every week, I am inviting a random person to join me and Tato, or just me, because again, Tato's going to be missing a couple weeks, to join us in our predictions. Now, our celebrity guest picker will not necessarily be going against me and Tato, because it's physically impossible to beat us, just in general. But also, when we predict 18 weeks versus your 1 or 2 or 3, depending on how many times we have you on. But our celebrity guest pickers will go against each other. And I'll kind of go on a winning percentage. So somebody with a full slate of, 16 games versus somebody who only has 8 or 10. Not necessarily fair, but if you go by winning percentage, it does something a little bit different. I don't know what special prize is for the winner. I might bring him on in the last week. We'll see. But I already have some people lined up. If you want to be my celebrity guest picker, message me. Facebook, Jacob E. West. Email at, I'm not giving my email. Are you crazy? But no, message me. Say, Papa, let me be a celebrity guest picker. And I'll put you on the list. Will it guarantee you make it? Absolutely not. But it could happen. We'll see. But yeah, actually physically join us on this journey as we predict the NFL season. But with that, Tato unfortunately was not able to join us, but that's okay, because we can manage without him. But please leave in your comments who your guaranteed win is. For me last year, I guaranteed the Cincinnati Bengals would beat the New England Patriots in week 1, and they didn't. They lost, and so I quit doing my guarantee win. But you give me your guarantee win. I'll give you a guarantee win right now. I guarantee that the Commanders beat the Giants. Links down in the description below. Try W Energy. Get 10% off your order. Code Papa TMG. If you want to make cool live streams like this, click on that link for StreamYard.com/generic link below and get 25% off your first month, I believe. Because you don't want to do the free. You want to pay for it. It's worth it. Trust me. I don't pay for it, but Aaron Canole does. Thank you, Aaron Canole.